I've had my E82 135i now for just over 6 months, and I thought now would be a great time to tell you how I'm getting on with it, what I like about it, what I don't, and whether you should consider buying one as well. Apologies in advance for the sunglasses, guys. I wouldn't ordinarily wear them, but we have winter sun now and it is blinding. Unknowingly, it seems to have actually gone behind the clouds now, so I look like a bit of a mug. But just to stop me from having any accidents or squinting the entire time of the video, I thought let's whack on a pair and crack on. Anyway, if any of you have seen my previous videos on this so far, you'll know that I'm a pretty big fan of it. I do consider it to be probably one of the best BMW hidden gems out there right now for the money. Yes, there are obviously better cars out there, but I don't think there's much that comes close to it for the price point. As a reminder for anyone watching, I ended up picking this up for just under £7,000. And so you might be sort of squawking at that thinking, well, £7 for a 1 Series, you've been absolutely done over, mate. But to fully understand this car, you need to know what's behind it. And I guess that comes down to probably my main thing I've enjoyed most about this car, and that is just the overall driving experience. And that is primarily driven by the engine underneath this thing and the gearbox that accompanies it. So this comes with a variant of the N55 engine, which you'll find in the first generation M2. Yes, it has its problems and faux pas like quite a lot of engines out there, especially BMW, but it is a phenomenal engine. And to have a 3-litre inline 6 in a car the size of a shoe, it does make this car extremely fun to drive. And to make that even better, they gave it a dual clutch transmission, something which you only really saw in M cars of the time, like the E92 M3 or the E9X M3 as it should really be called. But yeah, they decided to again give it a variation of that, and with the M55 and this together, it just makes such a good driving package. Like, it honestly does. This thing moves like absolute shit off a shovel, and I can't really describe it other than that it's just so fun to drive. It really, really is. That combined along with the hydraulic steering, which you obviously don't get anymore in cars, the fact that it's so compact and small and lightweight, and it's obviously only rear-wheel drive, it just makes such a good combination for a car. And again, when you think this car costs £7,000, it's a pretty good bargain. I thought that 6 months ago when I was looking at them, and I thought it when I picked it up, and I still feel that way today. I think while we're on the subject of the engine and the overall driving, let's talk a little bit about reliability. Now, reliability seems to be a touchy subject on BMWs. Not to say that they're overly more unreliable than any other brands, but in the specific lineup of BMWs, it seems to be a little bit tribal, and that seems to be divided either by what car you have, i.e. if you've got an M3 E9X, you'll be fighting that that's the best one ever and that nothing's ever gone wrong with it, or if you've got a certain type of engine derivative, like an M54, an M52, M55, whatever, S63, blah, blah, blah. It does seem to be very tribal, and people who have them swear blind that they're fine most of the time, or there's no issues, and people who don't will sort of, you know, poke holes and make fun of those particular engines. And in my opinion, it's just not that deep. It's really not. Without going into too much detail, if you're into your modding and you want to extract more power out of the stock engine itself, the M54 is probably the best way to go. It's twin turbo, so your power gains are going to be much bigger and much greater. Just on the flip side of that, with the M55, it is only single turbo, but it's twin scroll, so it's probably a little bit more reliable than the M54, but your power gains aren't going to be as much. M54 and M55 compared together, obviously the M55 is a more modern engine, and with that comes a little bit more reliability. Again, people in the comments who own either will swear one is better than the other. In reality, the M55 is the best all-round option, especially if you favour a bit more reliability. But again, it's all down to personal preference. I know people who own both types and are both very happy. I think the only thing to flag on that is if you are set on an automatic, like I said, this is a DCT, do not consider the N54. It has a normal, I think it's a ZF transmission. It's not a DCT. It's pretty sluggish. It's just not going to be fun as a car. So if you are going for an N54, opt for the manual. With the M55, you've got the option of both. So whichever is your preference, go for that. But I would definitely avoid the M54 if you are after an automatic only. That's sort of my best advice on that. The M55, although it is reliable, it does have a few common issues. One which actually struck me, which was the oil filter housing gasket. You know, these cars are old. Anything that's got sort of a rubber gasket, by the fact that this is 14 years old, it's going to have degraded, it's going to have worn out, and it will probably leak, which is what mine was doing. So those got replaced. Common other ones, anything else, like I said, that's just got a rubber gasket is going to be an issue, like all some gaskets, probably even stuff around your gearbox. It's best just to look for one that's had a really good service history, been well looked after, and just not been neglected. You know, these aren't going to be one-owner cars anymore. They're probably going to be at least 3 or 4 or even 5 plus. All you can hope for is that the people who've had it before you have taken care of it and just done those ad hoc jobs as and when they fall due. If you're like me when it comes to evaluating any sort of car purchases and you really want to nerd out on the specific things to look out for in respect to the engine and sort of the common issues with that, there was actually a really good video I discovered when I did my oil filter housing gasket. I've forgotten the name of the channel, but I will link it in the description. So yeah, if you do want to explore those, that's a really, really good video. They run through everything. Although forums are extremely useful, you know, a lot of people just go on there to moan and kind of, you know, raise issues. So when you do see issues raised about the M55 or any other sort of car you're considering, just take it with a pinch of salt. Same with reviews at restaurants, you know. There are some people out there who do God's work and actually review them because they enjoy them, but a lot of them are always going to be people who've just had a bad experience and have reviewed it. So what I'm trying to say is don't be too put off by sort of common issues and any sort of scaremongering you see on forums or other videos. There's a BMW specialist I use locally all the time. I've spoken to him at length about this car and others that I've owned, and he literally says, look, there's hardly anything to go wrong with these. As a platform, they're really, really good. So rest assured there's no sort of horrific issues there. As far as general reliability, you know what? This car has been absolutely fantastic. It has been treated well in my ownership so far. I've done a sort of full service on it, done the oil change, all the filter changes, done a coolant flush, I've done the oil filter housing gaskets, brakes and pads, I've done those, sorry, front disc and pads, I've done that. I've also done the rear springs. But again, these were me kind of probably just over-maintaining it. It wasn't really due. It wasn't actually due a service for quite a while, but look, as much as the owner was really nice, for my own peace of mind, I'd just rather know that I've done an oil change there and then. So, yeah, I'd probably advise that with most people, unless you're buying from a dealer or you know that the history is like really robust. Just your own peace of mind when you buy a used car, just service it. If you're able to do it yourself, like me, then that's perfect. You know, it's hardly going to cost you anything. And even if you need to fork out a little bit and, you know, get it done at a local independent, it is worth doing just purely for that peace of mind and not having to worry. Sorry, there is a cyclist coming up a hill and he's really struggling. Christ, he was very slow, wasn't he? Anyway, like I was saying, yeah, reliability with mine so far, touch wood, has been really good, apart from what I just spoke about. So, yeah, do not be put off by these at all. I guess moving on for reliability is probably running costs. I think they're quite intertwined, so I'll briefly talk about those. Because this isn't an M car, you don't really have to pay M car tax on it. And I was really surprised at the kind of price difference you got from non-M cars that were still sort of like performance cars. I know some of you in the comments will probably, you know, roll your eyes that it's a performance car, but at the end of the day, it's a 3-litre like turbo engine pushing out nearly 400 brake horsepower in something that weighs very little. So yeah, I'm going to claim it's a performance car, whether you like it or not. Yeah, like I said, M car tax is not a thing with these at all, and it saves you a hell of a lot of money. As an example, one of the things I did consider instead of one of these, but obviously it was a lot more expensive, was an E92 M3. It's always something I've kind of craved. And when I was just, you know, comparing them, obviously regardless of sort of purchase price, insurance and tax in the UK especially, insurance was probably, I think insurance on this is just under 800 quid. As an example, I've got quite a lot of no claims, live in a rural area. I think I've put it as garaged. So, you know, nothing really in there to sort of indicate that it should be high. I think naturally with the type of car it is, it's probably always going to be a little bit higher than normal cars, you know, because it is a sort of a 3-litre BMW 1 Series, which, you know, if you look at the new versions of the 1 Series, it's the young man's yobmobile. You know, and I think that just purely comes down to statistics. So I was expecting it to be a little bit lower given the type of car it is, but when I compared it to an E92 M3, you know, it was much cheaper. It was probably about 500 or 600 quid cheaper than one of those. So overall, you know, I'm pretty happy that you can save a little bit of money on your insurance. In addition to that, tax. At the end of the day, tax is what it is. It's set by the government, so the type of person you are and what you do and where you live has no impact. But given the age of this car, being 2011, was sort of around when tax was particularly high from an emission standpoint. Again, to bring up the E92 M3, because that is a 4-litre V8, it attracts, I think, one of the highest, if not the highest tax rates. I think it's about 760 odd quid now. This in comparison is about 350. So again, another saving there. So that's tax, insurance, fuel. For what I use this for and the type of car this is, fuel economy doesn't really bother me too much. But if you are interested, I'd say it probably averages about 24 to 23 around town. I've never actually driven this far on like a big long run, other than when I picked it up. So that was probably I think a 3, nearly 4 hour drive, and I reckon I probably got close to 30, if maybe just pushed over 30, which is good in my opinion. If you're absolutely hooning it around, you're going to get high teens, maybe extremely low 20s, but again, it's not really something I would consider. I think, you know, if you are wanting to daily one of these, it's perfectly doable, like no question whatsoever. Obviously, this one has a few little modifications on it that the previous owner did, i.e. the 19-inch wheels, which has low-profile tyres on it, the lowering springs. All these add up to things that aren't that comfortable, but you could obviously rectify or, you know, not do yourself if you did want a daily one. So I think fuel's not that bad. I currently have a car in my possession at the moment which does considerably less than that, which you guys won't have seen yet. It will appear at some point. But yeah, for me, if it's a non-daily, something that does that kind of MPG does not bother me in the slightest whatsoever. And I'm hoping it doesn't for you either. And I guess going back to what we were speaking about before, on top of sort of, you know, the kind of maintenance and the reliability element, this shouldn't cost you too much to actually run and maintain. Like I said, it doesn't have the M-car tax, so, you know, all your consumables, tyres, brakes, suspension, just general parts for the engine, etc., they're all considerably lower than any M-car out there, which all adds up. You know, I think major service shouldn't really run you more than 350 quid in reality at all. Again, if you're able to do it yourself, perfect. You'll find that the parts and everything else you need are incredibly cheap in comparison to M cars, which, like I said, I know this isn't an M car, but the performance it gives you is probably 85 to 90% of those. So I think it's a fair comparison and something that, you know, people kind of really need to consider. Do you really want to pay the premium for the M badge? Some people do, some people don't. But I'm just trying to give you my best advice. But yeah, there's nothing in these within reason, like I said, other than going down the into the dungeons of the forums, that should really scare you or put you off. It's not a particularly expensive car to maintain in comparison to those cars. Is it going to run you more than a Ford Fiesta? Yes. Is it going to run you more than a 2-litre diesel? Of course. But there shouldn't be too many problems thereabouts. Sorry about that. I just got distracted by a stupid Land Rover Defender driver with a trailer coming down this single track road and pulling over in the most horrific position ever, which meant I had to go up some horrific verge. Anyway, we move on. So we've spoken about reliability, maintenance, and running costs. What's it actually like to live with day to day? Well, for any of you who've watched my previous videos on this car will know that my main reason for sort of buying this was to kind of fit that role of like a cost-effective weekend car, if there is such a thing. Again, as some of you may know, I am dad to a little one, and because of that, you know, I do have limited time at the moment. And one thing that kind of has to go on the back burner, unfortunately, within reason, is cars. And because of that, I didn't really want to have to fork out quite a lot of money for a weekend car that wasn't going to get a huge amount of use and attention sometimes, alongside my daily and sort of the other cars that I have as well. And that's where this came in, because in my head, you know, yes, it isn't an M car, but it's 85-90% of the performance that I want. But because it wasn't a huge amount of money, it also gave me the confidence to kind of really tinker with it and look after it myself and do kind of what I wanted with it, which is all well and good. And, you know, for those purposes, it is fantastic. You know, it's not giving me any major issues. Every time I drive it, it puts a smile on my face. And it is a very, very fun and engaging car to drive. And when you factor in, like I said, that purchase price of under £7,000, there isn't much out there that can really match this for what you get. It does really, without meaning to sound cringe, really pack one hell of a punch. But if you're not going to use it for a weekend car, is it livable? Is it dailyable? And I would 100% say yes. If you are a single man or a woman, or you don't need really to use the rear seats, I think as a daily car to have fun with and mooch around in and get from A to B, this is fantastic. Yes, it'll cost you a little bit more on fuel. Yes, a little bit more to run and maintain. But when you want to, you can have a hell of a lot of fun with this car, and you still get a lot of the mod cons that you'd expect from a car of today. That's probably one thing I will add to this one, is my particular 135i is a bit sort of POV spec in a way, but I actually wanted it like that because I do find the infotainment systems and a lot of other systems that you find in older cars can now sort of age cars, so you can't see it, but instead of there being a screen on the dash, I actually have a sort of sunglasses case, and I wanted that. I didn't want a screen or anything like that because I just wanted it to be a completely clean sort of cockpit where driving is my main priority. But if you were going to daily one, I would advise you get one with a screen and then just get a CarPlay unit installed behind the dash. There's all sorts of aftermarket supports now for Apple CarPlay that seamlessly integrate with the existing OEM kind of infotainment system. So if you are going to daily one and you want to enjoy sort of Bluetooth audio and CarPlay, etc., or Android Auto, yeah, I would really recommend getting one with an original screen so you can plug in the CarPlay system. I think I said CarPlay about 7 times there, so apologies. But I'm just looking around now, and there's not really much else I'd probably want from a car. Again, this one is POV spec, doesn't have heated seats. If you're in the UK or a cold climate, especially over winter and autumn, get one with heated seats. I started the car up this afternoon to film this video, and it is a little bit cold now because we're in December. And yeah, did automatically go and click the heated seats button, and it wasn't there, obviously, so that was a bit sad. But again, these are all features you can get if you just scour around and look properly. Again, you can get the Harman Kardon sound system if you want, which has obviously a better overall sound system. You have little tweeters in here and stuff like that, which mine doesn't. Again, POV spec. So like I said, there's not really a lot that you're missing out on compared to newer cars. Just make sure you kind of work out what you want if you aren't going to daily it, or even if you're not and you just want to have all your luxuries, then yeah, just search for one that has what you need. And to be honest, I don't think you'll pay a huge amount more. I had a quick look on sort of Auto Trader, Facebook Marketplace, etc. This is probably still one of the cheapest ones around for kind of the spec that it is. They can go all the way up to, I think some people are looking at like 14, 15,000. In my opinion, that's a little bit fantasist. Unless it's incredibly low mileage, got full BMW service history, and it's going to be a bit of a collector's item, I wouldn't be paying anywhere near that. I think if you can get a good one under 10k, you've done well. But again, it comes down to what you want and what you want to spend. As I was saying, if your question is, can I use this as a daily? 100%, no problem whatsoever. I think my only query would be if you are a family, it does have ISOFIX, but I just think sort of 2-door cars are an absolute faff with a kid. They sound good in principle, and when you're weighing up those options of, I'll be fine, don't worry about it. Trust me, when you're like folding the front seat forward and trying to jam a child through a small gap into a car seat, it is hell. And I think any mum or dad out there can relate 100% that sometimes you just want to get out of the house, get in the car and go. You don't want to faff around. So yeah, incredibly first world problems, and some people don't have a choice of how many doors their car can have. But yeah, if you do have a family, I'd probably avoid this unless it is going to be a weekend car like me. And I suppose that leads quite nicely onto my next point of whether you should buy one or not. And I think in every scenario, I'm probably going to say yes, other than what I've just said about families, because I don't really see why you wouldn't. If you are in the market for, a fun daily driver that looks a little bit flashy to an extent and almost probably a little bit retro now, I certainly think they're coming of age very, very nicely. I don't think there's many options out there for this price point. Yes, you could get a more modern 1 Series, but I think there's certain connotations that come with those. Your insurance will definitely be higher, and I just don't think they look as good. This in Alpine White being the coupe, the E82 chassis, I just think it's a really, really good looking car. And again, what else is there for £7,000? I don't really know. There will obviously be options out there, but I don't think there's many that gives you this overall package, which I think I've probably said multiple times over this video, but it's true. You know, it gives you a lot of the performance that you may crave and you need. You're not missing out on much technology. Because it's not an M car, you're not going to pay over the odds in respect of servicing, maintenance, etc. So, you know, you're not going to save a lot of money there, but equally you're not going to pay over the odds compared to a normal car. So I think as an overall value proposition, and also on top of that, because they are aging well, especially when it comes to the N55 with the DCT, which is what this is, they didn't make many of them. I think they only had a production cycle for 2 years, maybe 2.5, because it was the facelift, so the LCI. So there's not that many around, especially in the UK. So naturally, as they come of age and they become sort of more sought after, which they will and they are doing, you probably won't lose any money if you buy one. You might lose a little bit, but they're definitely not going to drop really any further than they have now. And if you're really lucky and you hold on to it and look after it and, you know, you baby it a little bit, you might make a nice bit of money after your ownership as well. So I'm not saying they're a future classic, but the 1M is a future classic, or if not a classic already, and this is probably 90% of that car, maybe 85 for people in the comments who want to argue. So yeah, I think as an overall buying proposition, it's very, very good. Funnily enough, I mentioned in a previous video that when I actually bought this, there was hardly any E82 content out there on YouTube. You know, there was a few people who specialised in it and that's all they talked about, or that's all they had, blah, blah, blah. But since then, quite a few big YouTubers have actually sort of either reviewed them or commented on them, one of which was Doug DeMiro, whether you love him or hate him. But yeah, he did a review of one and loved it. So yeah, I think they are definitely getting the recognition they deserve. So that's probably another reason to consider buying one, because like I said, they will just keep going up in price. Not astronomically, you know, you're not going to be able to retire off one of these, but I don't think it's a bad thing to be able to not lose any money on a car. It's quite a rare thing nowadays, and you will not get that with any current modern car that's in production, within reason, other than like your Ferraris, etc. So guys, if you are on the fence about buying one of these, you've been a bit unsure, I hope this video helped, and honestly, I would highly recommend you go out and grab one. I don't think you'll regret it at all. Now is also probably quite a good time to pick one up if you can, because a lot of these are probably stored or not used over winter. So you never know, you might be able to grab yourself a bargain while they're not that in demand at the moment. And yeah, on that note, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like. If you have any queries, comments, questions, or anything else you want to know about the car, let me know. And if for some reason you're not subscribed to the channel, do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. It really does help. And I will see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.